The truth behind Bob Dylan's musical grudges, bands he reportedly can't stand when people hear the name Bob Dylan. A particular image often comes to mind. They think of the reclusive poet of the 1960s, the lyrical genius who reshaped rock, folk and blues into something entirely new. He's the chameleon of modern music, a man who's defied labels, confounded critics, and inspired generations. With a Nobel Prize in literature and over 6 decades of influence, Dylan is more than just a singer-songwriter. He's a cultural force. But behind that enigmatic public persona lies a man who's never shied away from blunt opinions, especially when it comes to his fellow musicians. Bob Dylan may be a master of metaphor and mystery in his music, but when it comes to speaking about other artists, he's been known to drop the poetic veil and speak his mind. Unlike many in the industry who tread carefully, Dylan rarely bothers with niceties when talking about artists he considers inauthentic or manufactured. Some folks, he once cryptically remarked, are just born into the wrong voices. And that sentiment echoes throughout his often frosty relationship with modern music, while other folk and rock legends often remain tight-lipped about their true thoughts on rising bands or chart-topping acts. Dylan has let glimpses of his disdain slip, whether in interviews, private sessions, or rumored backstage comments. His criticisms aren't just casual put-downs. They come from a place of deep belief that music should be raw, truthful, and rooted in tradition. For Dylan, it's not about fame or fanfare, it's about artistic integrity. And when he sees that missing, he doesn't hold back. In this video, we're exploring 6 bands that Bob Dylan has reportedly had serious issues with. From their musical style to what they represent about the state of the modern music industry. These are not just creative disagreements. These are the clashes between a cultural icon and the commercialization of the art form he helped define. Nickelback, the poster child for processed rock. Few bands have become as polarizing as Nickelback. To millions, they're a successful rock act with countless hits. But to others, including reportedly Bob Dylan, they represent everything that's gone wrong in popular music. According to a former executive from Columbia Records who worked with Dylan in the early 2000s, Dylan once referred to Nickelback as a machine's idea of a rock band. In his view, their music was calculated more about appealing to focus groups than expressing genuine emotion. The tension reportedly first surfaced during a radio interview. In 2005, when the host brought up Nickelback's chart-topping presence, Dylan, according to those present, didn't mince words. "Charts don't measure truth," he allegedly said. "Any robot can make a hit if you feed it the right formula." What particularly grated on Dylan was the band's formulaic approach to songwriting. During recording sessions for Modern Times in 2006, one of Dylan's collaborators claims he visibly grimaced upon hearing Nickelback's photograph play in the studio. "They've taken the mystery out of music," he reportedly said, "turned it into fast food for the soul." Things escalated even further in 2008, when both Dylan and Nickelback appeared on the lineup for a major European music festival. A coordinator from the event later revealed that Dylan's team made it clear he didn't want to be photographed near the band, calling them corporate rock puppets. When asked whether he minded sharing a festival stage, Dylan is rumored to have replied, "I'm not sharing anything. We're just unfortunate to be breathing the same air." Coldplay sentiment without substance? Coldplay is one of the most successful bands of the 21st century, but according to those who've worked closely with Dylan, their global acclaim doesn't impress him much. In fact, it may irritate him. A sound engineer who collaborated on Dylan's Love and Theft album once remarked that Dylan considered Coldplay's emotional anthems to be hollow imitations of true artistic depth. He saw them as the musical equivalent of a Hallmark card, the engineer recalled. Lots of pretty words, but no real feeling. This friction reportedly became evident in 2002, when Dylan was asked about the new wave of British bands reshaping the charts. While he offered kind words for several groups, he notably skipped over Coldplay. When a journalist pressed him on the omission, Dylan shrugged and offered a vague response, "I'm sure they mean well." The core of Dylan's reported disdain lies in what he perceives as a kind of emotional manipulation in Coldplay's music. Grand sweeping choruses and shimmering piano lines that aim to evoke emotion rather than express it authentically. After hearing the song Yellow during a radio interview, Dylan reportedly muttered, "Real emotion doesn't have to shout, it just has to be real." During the 2005 Live 8 concerts, where both Dylan and Coldplay performed, Dylan was said, "Two have declined an invitation to watch their set from the side stage," according to a BBC staffer. He remarked, "I don't need to watch someone try to make 80,000 people cry on cue." But perhaps his harshest words came during a 2009 interview, when someone compared Coldplay's artistry to that of the Beatles. Dylan's alleged response, "The Beatles wrote a day in the life. These guys write diary entries with a piano. That's not art. That's marketing. The Eagles' folk rock's corporate takeover." Of all the musical acts Dylan has reportedly criticized over the years, his long-standing frustration with the Eagles might be the most surprising, especially considering they share common roots in the American folk rock movement. But for Dylan, that's precisely the problem. In interviews and private conversations, Dylan has often been wary of artists he feels co-opted the spirit of the end 1960s without truly understanding or honoring its depth. According to Robbie Robertson, a close friend and former bandmate, Dylan saw the Eagles as a kind of musical betrayal, a polished, corporatized version of the revolution he helped spark. "They took the folk rock blueprint and drained it of danger," Robertson once said. To Bob, it was like watching someone turn a protest into a commercial. Back in the early 70s, when the Eagles were rising to fame with smooth harmonies and radio-ready production, Dylan's reaction was reportedly cold and immediate. A former A&R executive from Columbia Records recalled Dylan calling them the committee version of What I Do Alone, a reference to their heavily produced sound compared to his raw solo approach. What irked Dylan most wasn't just the sound. It was the spirit. He believed the Eagles represented a shift from authenticity to accessibility, from poetry to polish. During sessions for Blood on the Tracks, one musician present said Dylan vented about how music had become about albums sold, not stories told. The Eagles' rebellion in a suit producer Bob Johnston, who worked closely with Bob Dylan during some of his most prolific years, once shared a telling anecdote that revealed Dylan's utter disinterest in polished perfection. According to Johnston, Dylan scoffed at bands who would spend endless hours obsessing over technicalities. "They'll spend 6 months trying to get the perfect guitar tone," he recalled Dylan saying. "I wouldn't waste 6 minutes on that. Music isn't supposed to be perfect, it's supposed to be honest." That frustration boiled over in the 1970s, especially as Dylan watched bands like the Eagles dominate the charts. They were polished, radio-friendly and commercially successful, everything Dylan wasn't trying to be. A journalist from Rolling Stone, who followed both acts at the time, noted the stark difference in their approaches. When asked about the Eagles' mainstream appeal, Dylan reportedly didn't hold back. "Success without depth is just background noise. They've turned rebellion into elevator music, catchy, inoffensive, and easy to sell. This wasn't just about music." To Dylan, the Eagles represented a broader cultural shift, one that prioritized image, production, and marketability over substance. It was an era where slick harmony often replaced lyrical confrontation, and Dylan wasn't interested in playing along. The Grateful Dead jamming without a compass, though, Bob? Dylan shared the stage with the Grateful Dead and even toured extensively with them. Artistic philosophies couldn't have been more different. Dylan admired Jerry Garcia as a skilled guitarist, but found the band's improvisational performances frustratingly aimless. According to his former tour manager, Victor Maymoots, Dylan described their lengthy jams as musical wandering, a lot of motion, but little meaning. Tensions came to a head during their 1987 collaborative tours, while Dylan agreed to perform. With the Dead, he grew irritated with their habit of turning every song into an extended experiment. Guitarist Bob Weir recalled Dylan being blunt. "He told us we were wasting our talent, that music needs structure. A song has a beginning, a middle, and an end for a reason." What truly baffled Dylan was how the band's fan base seemed more devoted to the experience than the actual music. A backstage moment recounted by road manager John McEwen revealed Dylan's discomfort. "They're not playing music there. Managing a cult," he allegedly said. If the crowd is more focused on how the music feels than what it says, then you're not a musician anymore. You're selling illusions. During a studio session that included both Dylan and the Dead, producer Jerry Wexler said Dylan left abruptly after hearing one of their tracks. He muttered that 20-minute solos are 19 minutes too long, insisting that endless improvisation isn't artistic freedom, it's self-indulgence. The Beach Boys' pretty sounds, empty messages of all the artists, Bob Dylan reportedly criticized his feelings toward the Beach Boys were some of the most philosophical. He didn't just dislike their sound, he saw them as the embodiment of what was wrong with American pop music during the 1960s. According to folk legend Dave Van Ronk, Dylan viewed the Beach Boys' sunny California imagery as corporate escapism, a fantasy world that ignored the real social and political crises of the time. The conflict intensified. When Pet Sounds was released to widespread acclaim, music critics hailed it as a groundbreaking masterpiece. But Dylan's response, as recalled by music journalist Paul Williams, was cutting. He dismissed it as sophisticated simplicity, engineered for listeners who confused studio polish with emotional depth. While acknowledging Brian Wilson's talent as an arranger, Dylan is said to have quipped, "He's not a philosopher, he's a technician playing dress-up." One particular source of irritation was the constant comparison between Pet Sounds and Dylan's Blonde on Blonde. In a 1966 interview that was reportedly never published in full, Dylan remarked, "They're singing about surfboards and teenage crushes. I'm writing about fear, love, betrayal, real life. People can't see the difference. Maybe they deserve pop music." Tensions reportedly escalated around festival circuits in the late 1960s, a Monterey Pop festival organizer claimed. Dylan specifically requested not to be scheduled near the Beach Boys. "I can't follow musical cotton candy with actual substance," he allegedly said. "That's like playing Shakespeare after a soda commercial." Oasis, loud, proud, and borrowed perhaps the most open and bitter feud of Bob Dylan's career was his distaste for British rock band Oasis. During the height of Britpop in the 1990s, Oasis often made bold claims about their influence, going so far as to declare themselves bigger than the Beatles. To Dylan, these claims weren't just arrogant. They were offensive. According to a former Sony executive who worked with both artists, Dylan saw Oasis as a band built on borrowed ideas. He thought they were musical pickpockets, staking bits from Lennon, Young, and himself, and packaging it as innovation. When Dylan heard Wonderwall on the radio during the Time Out of Mind sessions, producer Daniel Lanois said he exploded. "This isn't homage, it's theft with a British accent." But Dylan's criticism wasn't only musical. When Liam Gallagher made disparaging remarks about Dylan's voice in a 1997 interview with NME, the tension became deeply personal. Dylan, never one to ignore a jab, reportedly snapped back, "When I sing off-key, there's a reason. When he does it, it's just bad singing pretending to be cool." Even as Oasis's popularity declined, Dylan's disdain didn't waver. At a rare press event in 2009, someone asked about the band's breakup. Dylan, dry as ever, replied, "If your biggest contribution to music is proving that confidence can mask mediocrity, and splitting up might be the most honest lyric they've ever written."